start with the home page of the cluster mapping site. What this does here is kind of hopefully draws the user in, especially for new users. As you can see here, there's some rotating news stories about the latest in the field and kind of what we see as important. And also it highlights, the map that you'll see across the site and kind of the unique qualities and the coloring of the map. You can see the legend in the top right corner, the title of the map, innovation growth, and on that last one, and the year time span. As you scroll down, we'll dive into a quick little section about the latest in the news, what's going on. We're actually going to update this probably later today with the launch of the tool. This tool was officially launched this Monday, September 29th in Minneapolis, and we're really excited about that. And kind of just to add another little eye candy for folks. And then the next section gives you a quick primer on what clusters are and why they're important. What this does is allows users to kind of get a sense of what's going on and why we think this is important as it relates to the profile of your economy, performance, drivers, policy, and private sector companies, which I know a lot of the folks on the phone will be interested in that perspective. So this next section, as we keep scrolling down, it's for the kind of community practice organizational element of the site, which we'll talk about secondly after I kind of go through the data side. This is, the biggest kind of growth area for the site and the tool itself. We see the community of practice as really continuing to grow and reflect the needs of the communities in which we work with, which we're really excited about. So I think, one homework assignment for everyone on the phone is if you do have suggestions and/or ways that you think the site can be enhanced, we would love to hear them. And please send them to that email that I mentioned earlier, cmp@hbs.edu. As we keep scrolling down, we get into dive into the data section. What this does is just lays out very clearly the two ways to look at the data. So first, you can look at the data, or first or second, by region and then by cluster. So what the regional view will get you is first a look at the entire U.S. as it relates to different business and environmental economic indicators. The cluster view will first take a look at the clusters across the U.S., and then you can drill down and still get to the same information that you would get from the regional view, just a slightly different manner, and we'll take you through both of those today. As we scroll down, we have kind of the bottom of the page, which just gives you a snapshot of what the project's about, a blog, and a recent resources section. One thing to note, if we scroll back to the very top of the page, it's important, and it's across the entire site. Actually, it will be on the next page, sorry. I think that one unique and key thing to mention at the very beginning of this presentation is that this site is an open data, open resource for anyone, and in and outside of the country. And I think that really drives home the point that Rebecca was saying about using this tool as a resource for folks coming to your offices, et cetera, and asking about the U.S. business environment and the economic environment, as well as relevant cluster growth, industry growth in the U.S., and is a tool for that purpose. And so I think that's really important. And then secondarily, to go back to what I was mentioning on this page, you can see the contribute button, which emphasizes all the ways you can contribute on this site. So you as a user, once you register, please feel free to go ahead and register right now, we would love it. You can add a blog post, you can add a resource, you can add a relevant organization, and all those different ways kind of emphasize building this community of practice and this best practices, lessons learned, publications, and other things that might be relevant in the space. So to start, let's go ahead and take a look at the region dashboard. So here you see that we selected that region button at the top, and it sent us to this page, and we call this the region dashboard. And what this does, as I mentioned, gives you a sense of what's going on across the U.S. With regards to the 52 indicators that we currently have, but that list is growing. And I think that's also an area, we very much are interested in any feedback. If you're aware of any other data sets out there, or anything you think might be relevant to the site, that's also, a place where we might get some feedback from folks on the phone. So what this does is, on the left side is a set of drop-downs. So the first drop-down is a category drop-down. There's 3 drop-downs here: performance, business environment, and population and demographics, as you can see. And each of those have separate drop-downs that filter accordingly. As we can see, we're going through a few of those. For some reason, it's showing up a little bit fuzzy on the web page, but we'll just keep going with selecting them, because I think you can see them once they're selected. The other thing to note here is you can look at different region types, which is very important, I'm sure, to a lot of folks that you may work with. We can look at state, we can look at economic area, we can look at metro micropolitan statistical area, and county level information, which really speaks to kind of the breadth and depth of the data and the ability to use this in various ways. One thing to note on this as we scroll down to the bottom of the page is the customized region builder. And this one is perhaps more applicable to domestic entities, but may also be helpful for international folks as well. Basically what this does, if we select it just quickly, it allows you to build your own region based on a preset set of counties. It does require that you log in as a user. So once you're a registered user, you can go ahead and log in. It's very straightforward, as I mentioned, to register. And what it pulls up is this map of the U.S. And you can see those dark purple veins on the map. Those are the county outlines. And if you select any of them, we'll zoom right into the area, and you can select any set of counties that you want to look at. So maybe it's 3, maybe it's 20, maybe it's even 60. And they can be across state lines, they can be dispersed across, they don't have to be touching, they don't have to be connecting. And then what you'll do is you'll hit save, and you'll give that custom region a name, and then a region dashboard will develop. We won't take you through that in this case, but if we want to give the name, say, maybe perhaps my name, Sarah Jane's region, once you type that in and you hit save, it will give you, show you this tool, this little taskbar that shows you how long or what percentage it is done. And generally speaking, it should take under between 1 to 3 minutes, hopefully less. If you have 60 counties or something like that, it will take a bit longer, depending on kind of what you're looking at. And in a second, we'll show you kind of what develops there. But first, let's go back to that regions page and look at a specific region. We'll wait for the map to pick back up. Okay, so we're going to change the drop down to states. And let's go into New Mexico. And when you select any of the states, this little box will pop up, and what you'll select is that button at the very bottom that says Go to Region Dashboard. And this will take you to the region's dashboard for your selected region. So perhaps you had selected a county. This would then be whatever county you selected. Selected's name at the top. In this case, because we chose the state clearly, it's New Mexico at the top. So what it drops you on is this summary tab. So as we can kind of circle around the summary tab, this tab does a quick snapshot, a highlight of everything the dashboard basically offers you. Each of the sequential tabs, so performance and drivers, cluster portfolio, subregions, and organizations, goes into more detail of what is at a summary level on this summary tab. So if we scroll down here, we'll get a snapshot of the performance and drivers in this region specifically. In this case, there's 4 listed here, but again, remember there are 52 total, so that performance and drivers tab will have 52 scorecards, or what we call these, on that page. And as you can see here, each of these individual scorecards or spark lines gives you a rank for the region. So in this case, because we're looking at a state, it's for unemployment, it's ranked 6 out of 50. That's pretty good. That means New Mexico is doing pretty well. Unfortunately, you can see the percentage change is negative, but and then you can see here. You can see here on the left side of that box, the 2 is the growth in 1998. And then 2012, the growth is 29, you're ranking 29. So it kind of gives you a sense of what's going on. And what this also can do is, as you're scrolling over, you can see the little box pop up. And what this box says is, please click here to view a scatter plot of this region's performance compared to other similar regions. So if we select the employment one, this scatter plot will pop up and give you a sense of what's going on nationally. And as you can see, New Mexico is highlighted in red. One thing to note that we just showed you is the zoom capability. So when you scroll over the scatter plot, a crosshair will pop up. And crosshair is just basically a T, T shape, and it will allow you to click and zoom on whatever area of the scatter plot you want to look at. And then, of course, if you scroll up to the top, you can click the zoom out button, and it will take you to the starting place. One quality I want to go ahead and highlight on this is something that's across the entire site, and it speaks to the open source, open data side of the site, that there are 2 download buttons across the entire site. So all the charts, all the maps, etc., will be downloadable. There are still a few kind of tweaks that we're making there, so if you run into a few problems, let us know. But for the most part, all of the data at this point is downloadable. So as we're highlighting right now, on the right side, that's a download image, so that's just a quick snapshot of what you're looking at here. And then the left button is the CSV download, so that allows you to look at the data in an Excel file. So that's just to give you a quick overview of kind of that capability, which again I'll highlight in a minute, but it's really it's in almost every spot possible on the site where someone might want to download something. So if we go back to the summary tab for New Mexico, as we continue to scroll down, the cluster portfolio section will be summarized. So as you can see here, what this section does is highlights the strongest traded clusters, which I'll go into what that means in a second, for the given region. It also breaks down the employment of traded versus local clusters, as well as the top clusters by employment on the right side. This just gives you kind of a quick snapshot of what's going on in that region and allows you to get in a little bit further as well. So as we continue to scroll down, there is a quick section that highlights subregions. Most of this information is actually on the subregions tab, but this link allows you to go directly there. And then at the very bottom, you can see this related content area, and this is the part about the content that you you and your constituents and people that you work with can contribute to. As I mentioned, the organization's component, the blog, and the resources are all contribution based. We obviously have tried to populate this as quite a bit as robust as we can, but we really are looking for folks to contribute there as well. So to scroll back up to the top, I want to quickly show you the cluster portfolio tab. So that's where we're clicking now. And what this does is gives you quite a bit more in-depth view of what's going on in the region. It allows you to look at the cluster by employment, by wages, by job creation, specialization, and timeline. It allows you to look at it over whatever number of years you want to look at it. You can switch back and forth. You can also look at, currently we're looking at traded clusters. You can also look at local clusters. And what this does is kind of gives you a sense of what's going on, what's changed over time. The timeline feature is actually really neat if we want to go ahead and click on that one. It gives you a sense of how the clusters in this region have performed over several years. And I think it does give that kind of feature that sometimes is missing when you do pure data and not just pulling raw data. Stuff like this is often missed. So we think this is a great feature. So to scroll back up, actually to scroll, we should establishments. Yeah, so this is also to show, so first we were looking at employment over time, and then we just switched to the establishments button, and that shows establishments over time. So these are just companies, et cetera, that are established in a given region. So as we scroll down the page, we'll get to that cluster portfolio section that you saw on the summary tab as well. So what we can do here as well is you can look at each of the individual clusters, which will, in a second, I'll take you to the cluster view of the national cluster view. One thing to note as you scroll, if we scroll back up to the, and we go to, let's say, wages, let's go to the wages chart. Each of these individual bars that you see here, so these individual cluster bars, in this case, we're highlighting medical devices, are also clickable. So if we click one of those, in this case, oil and gas production and transportation, you'll see there's several links below it. So one says explore subclusters, one says go to the US cluster dashboard, and one says go to region cluster dashboard. So first let's explore the subclusters in this case. So if we select that, we'll get a sense of what the subcluster makeup is. If we want to get even more information, perhaps in pipeline transportation, we select that bar again, and as you can see, the Explore Industries button and go to Subclusters Dashboard button, both of those allow you to get a little bit more granular. I think the Explore Industries button, let's go ahead and select that, gives you a real sense of what is making up this subcluster, and then in essence making up the cluster of oil and gas itself. So as you can see here, the first two columns say, show you what is, obviously the region we're looking at, New Mexico, and then the second column shows you the individual NAICS codes that are within this region and within this subcluster. So you can see here there's 4, and if we X out of this chart, you can see here, the same ones are, this is the rolled up subcluster. So for each of these, so if we selected drilling wells, there'd be a certain set of industry codes associated with that. We'll go to another one. In this case, there's just one. So if we take one step back, so we go back to that cluster level. So if we go to show wages across all traded clusters, and we select oil and gas again. The other thing that's neat to note is the region cluster dashboard. So if we go ahead and select that one, what this will do is take us to a dashboard that looks at the cluster in New Mexico. So it's a slightly different viewpoint of data that you can see in a lot of different ways. It's just a different way to look at it, and hopefully help generate some ideas or ways that you can think about things differently. So if we scroll down here, the summary tab again highlights what's on the sequential tabs, subregions, subclusters, and organizations. And as we scroll down here, you'll see a slightly different map, and what this map does is really looks at the cluster itself. So on the left-hand side, there are several drop-downs. You can look at various different indicators there. We can select a few for you to see the differences. And the same thing goes here. You can also change the region type. So since New Mexico is pretty big, maybe we want to look at, MSAs, for instance. And you can see how it's doing that way too. So if we keep scrolling down, we'll get a quick snapshot of the subclusters themselves within this region. So as you can see here, activities for oil and gas operations, oil and gas extraction, oil and gas machinery, pipeline transportation, drilling wells, and petroleum processing, similar to what we already know. If we scroll up a little bit, we can change the timeline. Let's change it to 2010 to 2012, see what's going on. Scroll back down, you can see, oh, actually there was a drop in job creation in pipeline transportation specifically. Perhaps there's a reason, maybe as, if you're in the New Mexico area and you're, somebody who's more on the ground and understands what's going on locally, perhaps something was sold, or a business moved out, or a company moved out, or there was some catastrophe or something. There's some reason as to why the job creation went down. And perhaps you also can make, infer some conclusions by understanding maybe why the first subcluster, support activities for oil and gas operations, is so high, and hopefully help generate some understanding and infer some conclusions as well. I think that's an important point of this tool, is that it's not going to give you the answers, but what it will do is allow you to see the data in a new way and hopefully shed some light on what's going on, maybe why it's happening, in ways that you can address it better in the future. But it is not, the tool in and of itself is not a consultant. It's not going to tell you everything you need to know. You still have to have some understanding of what's going on in the area. So if we scroll back up, next, I want to actually go and look at the clusters, like we were talking about, across the entire U.S. So if we scroll all the way up and we select the clusters button at the top, what this will do is take us to the clusters dashboard. And this is an important place to understand what's going on across the nation. As I mentioned before, I mentioned traded and local, and what this does is just gives you a little primer on what that means. Traded industries, to kind of reiterate what's here, serve markets in other regions or nations, and they often are concentrated, right, in regions that are, can afford specific competitive advantages. We'll show you a map in a second what we're talking about, and you also saw on the map we were just on how there were pockets of high specialization in certain areas and high employment. Local clusters, on the other hand, are more based on the local market. So they're located everywhere. They're your typical kind of mom and pop shops, like an elementary school to a local bakery to something in that realm. And what this bar chart underneath these two boxes shows are three different indicators as it relates to traded versus local. So you can see traded clusters tend to have a smaller percentage as it relates to employment. However, they generally have much stronger percentages in income and patents. So the high growth, high innovation side. As we keep scrolling down, this gives you a quick overview of the two different ways to look at the data. Again, to look at it from a national view, which I'll show you in a second, and then secondly, to look at it from a cluster view specifically. So it's diving into each of the clusters and kind of getting a little bit more granular with the data and the analysis that you might be able to do. So first, let's look at it from a national level. So right now, we're looking at all of the clusters. So first, we have here the 51 traded clusters. We'll scroll all the way down. It will be a little dizzying, sorry, to the local clusters in blue at the very bottom. And each of these bubbles are clickable. We can just click on one quickly to show you. And they give you a little snapshot about the employment and the subclusters within them. So first, let's go back up to the top, and we'll look at the clusters across the U.S. So let's first take a look at employment, see what's going on there. As you may have guessed, business services, generally ranks at the top with regards to employment. And as you can see here, as it goes down, all the individual clusters themselves. And then, as I noted before, you can also toggle between traded and local clusters to kind of get a sense of what's going on. As with the other charts, each of these bars are clickable. So if you clicked on one of these bars, so in this case, local health services, you can, in this case, go to that individual dashboard. We'll wait, we won't do that yet. But each of the charts are in the same fashion. So next, let's look at wages. And then, so if you click snapshot, in this case, financial services is up top. Job creation, let's take a look at that one. And in this one, let's scroll up a little bit. We can change the start year and end year to kind of show whatever time frame you might be interested in. And you can see the change, as you change it from year to year. Okay, so One chart that I do want to highlight, that there still is a bit of tweaking we're doing with it, is the specialization chart. So we're going to look at it from a national perspective, but again, you'll see that button quite a bit across the site when you're looking at individual clusters and regions. So what this does is gives you a sense of how specialized the clusters are. So if we see here, we scroll down, they're a little bit jumbled, and this is kind of to the point of what we're trying to tweak a bit. There is a zoom in capability, so you can use the crosshairs to create a box, and it allows you to zoom in and see what's going on. We're still trying to figure out the best way to view this visually. It's very complicated because there's a lot of data here, but it still is functional and allows you to see, in this case, you can see those four at the bottom: performing arts, water, transportation, medical devices, biopharmaceuticals, have a lot of growth in employment, doing fairly well. Livestock processing, you can see above it, is doing fairly well, but has actually lost jobs. Yeah. And each of these bubbled circles are also clickable. So if you just click on livestock processing, for instance, you can see there's also the links to go to the cluster dashboard. So all these different ways to kind of get to the different information based on kind of what you're trying to do or what the user's trying to do. Let's scroll back up to the top, and let's go back to the overview button of the bubbles, and we're going to go ahead and dive into one of the clusters. So let's dive into education. And as you can see, again, it's a snapshot of the employment as well as the subclusters within that cluster. If you select that bottom link, go to the cluster dashboard, it will bring you to the summary tab for the chosen cluster. So in this case, we're looking at education and knowledge creation. The default map on this dashboard is the specialization map that we have seen already when we were looking at a specific region. This one, again, is across the entire U.S. It's defaulted to the economic areas, but as you know, we can switch it to counties, MSAs, states, all the different region types, and kind of get a sense of what's going on and where this cluster is strongest. As you can see, the map is zoom in. You can zoom in and zoom out to different areas and kind of get a sense of what's going on, what counties what MSAs in this case we're looking at. Stockton, California metropolitan area in this case. And as we continue, so we're going to look at one more viewpoint of the county view, which is often helpful for folks, both obviously domestically and internationally, but I think also it's just important because I think often the data often only comes at, or people are looking at data that's only at a state level or maybe economic area, but this ability to look at the county information I think is super helpful, especially when you're thinking about for stuff for like site selection or you're working with really local policymakers or whatnot. You can see Maricopa County, Arizona is doing very well in this cluster with regard to with regard to specialization. No, job creation, sorry. Okay, keep scrolling down. So for this cluster specifically, we're looking here now at the top regions. So as you can see, there's only about 10 listed here, but if we'll go in a minute to the top regions tab and we'll get a little bit more information. But again, that's kind of highlighting what is going on in this cluster. The strongest one, as you can see, is in California, New York, Pennsylvania, Mass. Probably not surprising to most of you, but always helpful to see it in a more analytical view. So if we keep scrolling down, we'll get to the subcluster section for this cluster specifically. So in this case, it is college, universities, and professional schools, research organizations, training programs, educational support services, professional organizations. And again, each of these are clickable, the bars, so you can in each of them go and explore more what's going on. If you want to know what's the makeup of research organization and you want to know the specific industries that industry codes associated with that, you would click on that Explore Industries link that we clicked on previously. And you can also go to a subcluster's dashboard, which will give you a little more information. So if we scroll up, I want to go into the top regions tab. And what this does is gives you, again, a bit more information about the top regions, more than you just saw in that summary tab. So here we have listed all the states and how they rank within this cluster. And as you can see, the bottom being Wyoming, the top, as we know, being California, I believe. And each of these are clickable as well, as you may have guessed. And I think something that might be interesting to look at is to look at the region cluster dashboard now from this angle. So let's go look at Florida and select that region cluster dashboard. What this will do again is look at that cluster in Florida, and you can see that at the top. It makes it fairly clear. And as we scroll down, you might say, well, why is Florida strong or fairly strong? You know, they're gray, so that means they're not that strong. But if we change the region type, let's do maybe MSA, see what that does. You can see now why it has a fairly strong specialization, or why it's doing fairly well with regards to the overall state. It has these pockets that are doing very well. But this also speaks to why it is important to go into this granular level of detail and not just look at a state in its whole, but also to get to this kind of more detailed granular level. In this case, it looks like the strongest MSA is, scroll down a little bit to the, I think, yeah, so it's so Miami, Florida metropolitan area is probably obvious one, and then the other one is, the other blue one, is Palm Bay, Florida metropolitan area. So that's just to give you a sense of that. This is again in the region cluster dashboard. So if we keep scrolling down, we will also, again, this is similar to what we saw a bit ago, gives a sense of job creation with regards to the subclusters. So as you can see here, you know, colleges, universities, professional schools are doing very well in Florida. If we scroll back up and we change the timeline to 2010 to 2012, you can see here, there's a significant drop in colleges, universities, and professional schools. So that kind of shows how over time, it does show over time how much that's changed in Florida and the landscape around, you know, that subcluster in itself. Let's scroll back up to the top. And let's take a quick look at the organizations tab. So in this case, this speaks to why we need help from all of you, as well as part of our launch and kind of our outreach efforts is to get this populated as much as possible. So right now there's no related organizations to this specifically. However, if we go to, as we show here, you can add an organization, add the resources. That contribute button emphasizes that ability to do that. But if we now take a look at the organizations button, we'll get a quick kind of snapshot of all the different organizations we currently have on in our registry. I think we have about 1,700 now listed here on this map, and they're broken down into those sections that you see at the top of the map. This map is also clickable, so if we click any of the states, it'll zoom in, and you'll see these individual dots pop up. Each of these are individual organizations within the state and within the area region, and this is what we are trying to populate as much as possible. I think this also speaks to, again, where the site will evolve the most is in this community of practice and how we make the site and the community of practice more navigatable, as well as practical and more user-friendly for folks that are interested in working with various other organizations and entities, etc. And I think, you know, one thing, this is another area where we really do, you know, would really like and would love to have any feedback that you guys have on how this tool could be more helpful in ways that you could see you know, this community of practice, this kind of burgeoning community of practice being more helpful and user-friendly. So to scroll back up to the top, one more thing I want to highlight is the About section. What this does is gives you kind of real set of tools to understand and help others understand what clusters are about. So this about the project section just gives a quick quote from Secretary Pritzker when she soft launched the tool earlier this summer. And what it does is just gives you a little bit of a sense of what the project's about. If we go into the cluster mapping methodology section, this helps users really understand the makeup of the clusters. So those links that you see, those PDFs and downloads are all clickable and downloadable. And what that is if you were to select the traded clusters appendix, you would see the full layout of everything on this site in basically an appendix format. So it'll go through each of the clusters that you just saw on the site, what the subclusters are. So in this case, we're looking at aerospace, vehicles, and defense. You can see the subcluster on the right. So in this case, there's 3 subclusters. And then you can see the actual NAICS code and NAICS name on the left side. As you know, if you've been following the webinar, all of this is accessible on the tool itself, but sometimes it's helpful to have something like this to print off, or for maybe if you have an economist in your office or a statistician or somebody that wants to look at it in its entirety, this can be a helpful way to look at it. So if we go back to the methodology section, we scroll down here, it gives a little bit of a sense of the real methodology behind it, how we drew these conclusions, the algorithm used in creating these cluster definitions. In case some of you don't know, the project itself is based on a body of research that dates back several decades with regards to cluster-based economic development. Originally pioneered by Professor Michael Porter, who runs the institute here at Harvard Business School. And that kind of, over, the course of, 10 to 15 years, this evolved into something that the federal government ended up being interested in and supporting. And about 4 years ago, we received a grant from the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration to work with us on developing a portal and the project itself, the U.S. Cluster Mapping Project, and this portal tool that anyone can use around the world, open data, open source, and help drive more informed decision making. And so that's what we've done, and we're really excited about getting this launched this week. We're kind of our first, I guess, real set of users after the launch. And but as I mentioned, I think the important thing here is to note is that this is a living website, and it is something that we will be continuing to refine and make more effective and useful as we continue to develop the site. So one thing to note here, this is the custom region that for those of you that were on earlier in the call, I created a custom region on a certain set of counties. You can see selected on the upper right side of the United States, they're selected. And what this does, this should look very familiar to you. This is a region dashboard specific to the custom region in this case, but it's really no different. It has the summary tab, it has the performance and drivers, it has the cluster portfolio. It has all the same setup as you would get on a normal region, and that's kind of a unique quality of the tool is this custom region builder. And this is really based on a lot of user feedback, and I think the applicability of the tool is much more enhanced with this capability. So with that, we're going to take a couple questions. I'm going to first take the ones that were submitted on the chat, and then we'll open up the line, and hopefully it doesn't get too crazy on the line with all the background noise potentially, and we'll ask a couple Q&A that way. Do you have them? Just one? You can say it. You can say it.
Could you please provide some examples of traded clusters?
Okay, so first question is, could you please provide some examples of traded clusters? So let's go back up to the top, and we'll go to the cluster dropdown, or cluster dashboard, sorry. Scroll down again. So all of these 51 bubbles here, these are the traded clusters. So all of these are considered traded. So let's just go into a different one. Let's go into electric power. and select that dashboard. And you can see here, scroll down to the subcluster section. You can see the subclusters that make up this cluster. And each of these, so say we select alternative electric power, that one would allow us to, if we select industries, that would give us the set of industry codes that fall within that subcluster. So this is a traded cluster. So I see the question maybe is, what's the difference between traded and local? So let's go back to that cluster dashboard again, or cluster landing page. So let's hold here. And so these two boxes help describe what they are. So again, traded clusters serve markets in other regions or nations. They're concentrated in specific regions. These are the ones that are high growth, high innovation, generally speaking. And then the local clusters are located in every region. It's like a local, shop, a drugstore, an elementary school, a radio network, something that exists everywhere, essentially. And they're the foundation of local economies. So hopefully that helps. Okay, any other questions on the chat?
The next one is the tools access limited to CS employees or can it be shared with clients?
The tool is completely open source. So as I mentioned before, anyone in the world could literally, with an internet capacity, could get on and look at this tool and register. Again, that really speaks to the point of this tool being open data, open source, and free of charge. Any other questions on the chat? Do either of the clusters include names of individual companies, either in the region, area, or by industry? So right now we don't have the company names, but the one indicator we should show is the Fortune 1000 headquarters. So we do have we have two indicators. One that is the establishment indicator, and then one is the headquarters of large Fortune 1000 firms. These are the closest indicators to that, but at this point we actually don't have the capability to look at individual names. That being said, if we go to, we're going to show one more thing here, I think helpful to see. You can see here where it's listed. So this is at the bottom of that performance and drivers tab. You get a list you get the number of how many headquarters of large Fortune 1000 firms are there. One thing to note, if we go to the About section, we have an Other Tools link, and this will link you to other tools that are out there that might be of use. I think I mentioned this at the very beginning, but every resource that we use is free, so we use all sources that are technically public. There are sources out there like the NETS database, NETS database, that has information about companies at that level, and we're looking into that, but it does cost money to purchase. And so, right now the tool is completely based on public data, and so I think that's unique, but it also is limiting, as you can guess, and may have guessed. And so we're hopefully, in the next several months, going to be looking at a couple data sets that will get us hopefully more beneficial information, especially as it relates to the company information, because we do get that inquiry quite a bit. Any other questions?
There's another one on from Rick Ortiz. Says, we get a lot of questions about infrastructure. Can the site provide information on infrastructure such as railways, airports, highways, etc.?
So I guess one question, I think there may be a question of what you can see on the map. Is that more of like, can we see the railways and the infrastructure on the map, like more of a interactive map, or are you asking more about the industry itself? If you can respond, or when you get it, oh, there you are, I think you're responding now. Access points. So that would be actually mapped. So if we were to go to the region view of the map, it would actually be like plotted on here to kind of show. That is something we will be looking into. There's a lot of different like one thing we've gotten is like bodies of water and ports and stuff like that being located on the map, like capitals, state capitals, and things like that. So yes, that is something that's a great suggestion. It's definitely something we're looking into because I think having that framework is pretty helpful, especially for international folks. So I definitely agree with you. That's a great point. Any other questions on the chat?
There's another one from Eve Larman. Was working with an overseas company searching for manufacturers of communications-related equipment in the U.S. And can you briefly demo how to identify center of manufacture for a product?
Okay, so we might not be able to get to the center of manufacturer for a product, but what we can do is look at the communications cluster. Go in there. Look at the subclusters. I believe there's a communications equipment subcluster. So if we look at that industry makeup, we'll go to the industry codes here. So I'm assuming the product itself will fit into one of these industry codes, the telephone apparatus manufacturing, other communications equipment manufacturing, and radio, television broadcasting, and wireless communications equipment manufacturing. So hopefully it fits in there. If not, then send me a follow-up email, we can talk about it, but my best guess is it does. And so with this, if we X out of the industry table, with this will allow you to see, if we scroll up to the top, is where this industry is most specialized. So say, okay, well, we're seeing it's very specialized, as you may have guessed, in the Pacific Northwest. So let's go to that one up in the Pacific Northwest, see what's going on. If we were to go to that, let's see, should we go to the region dashboard? Go to the region dashboard and kind of see, we want to see, go to the cluster portfolio. Let's see where communications falls here. Okay, so yeah, go to the region cluster dashboard here. And then if we scroll down, we can kind of see what's going on, growth in those areas, the specific subclusters. I think what you maybe want is an actual like center that's working on this type of stuff. So then my suggestion would be if we go to the organizations map, so actually no, scroll up to the top. So theoretically, this organizations button, if we were to select that, no, sorry, on the organizations that are related to this specific cluster, this here would be listing relevant organizations that work in this specific space. And this is kind of the point that we're trying to drive, is that we do need people to register, and as much as we want to pre-populate with information, which we are continuing to do, this kind of emphasizes the need to get more folks registered and get them linked to the various clusters so that people can then locate them directly. But this is where you would see it. I think also if you go to the cluster dashboard again, we go to communications cluster more broadly, I know that there will also be some related organizations there. Yeah, so you can see here across the U.S. there's a couple listed. Unfortunately, there's only 3, but we want this to obviously grow, as I mentioned, and continue to be built. Okay, any other questions? Yep.
There was from a practical standpoint, if I'm an investor in oil and gas and I'm looking at areas to invest within the U.S., can I use this tool to identify where the oil and gas clusters are?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm going to go to the cluster view here, look at oil and gas, and go to that dashboard. You can see here is the specialization is by economic area, but I'm guessing they're going to probably want to look at a county area. So let's look at the county view. What this does is gives you a kind of an example, or not example, but it gives you a viewpoint of the entire U.S. By county as it relates to oil and gas. As you can see, there's a high concentration in Colorado, North Dakota, places you probably easily could have guessed, but it helps you really look at a granular level. What's going on? Why, perhaps what's going on in, I don't know, northwest New Mexico, in that, or southwest Colorado. You see those blue. Maybe something's going on there that might be of interest. And what it also will do is if you go to a different, let's go to a different drop down, maybe establishments, or employment growth rate's a good one, and establishments is another good one to look at, because then that also gives you a sense of maybe where there are a lot of establishments in this area, maybe there's already something going on, so it kind of gives you a sense of, for an investor standpoint, of what's going on across the U.S. and potentially as a site selection tool. I think it could help inform, absolutely help inform site selection. Okay, how do organizations add themselves? I see that one. So let's go and walk through that quickly. So first and foremost, you have to register yourself. So up at the top, you see it says, hello, Jenny Zhao. That means that we're logged in, but all that would be for you, it would say sign in and register, and just click the register button. You register yourself very easily, and you'll get an email confirmation. You select the confirmation email, and then it takes you back to the site, and you're in. It's very straightforward. It should take under a minute. If you have a problem, please check your junk mail first, and then shoot us an email if it's you're still having a problem. There are we've had a few issues with security of certain companies or entities, like not allowing the email to come through, but for the most part it should work. Then this is how you add the organization. So once you're registered, you're logged in, you go to the organizations tab, or really anywhere on the site where there's a contribute button, and you say add an organization, and then it takes you, so let's see, when you click add an organization, select this, it'll take you to this page, and then you can input all the information you want to input. We do drive the user to put in pretty granular information about what clusters you're associated with, what regions you're associated with, the NAICS code. If you have that, we would love it. This is the type of information we're really trying to drive. I think this, this back end might continue to be built out, as you probably guessed, as we continue to refine the tool and kind of figure out what is helpful for folks. You can see we have a pretty, a good set of, data points that we're trying to pull from entities, and we make almost all of it public, so folks that are just perusing the site can hopefully get as much information as possible. So we really, again, for those of you that joined late, really urge you to help us populate this map and with your constituents and colleagues and communities you work in. Okay, I'm going to open up the line and see if anyone has some last minute questions. Bear with us, because I hope it might be a little crazy on here, but I'll try it.
The conference is now in talk mode. To mute all lines, press 81.
Okay. Anyone have any questions? I open up the line. Nope. Okay. Well, I thank you for your time. Rebecca, is there anything else that you want to say?
Did I hear someone start to ask a question? Okay. I was just typing one in. I think organizations can be anything like our local economic development corporations or industry incubators. Are you suggesting we might go in and add some of these, or would we just inform these types of organizations that they should go ahead and include themselves?
Ideally, we would like the organizations themselves to go in, because then they can own the profile page of the organization and tailor it accordingly. But if you feel like they're just not going to do it and it's better, and bottom line is we want everyone on here as much as possible. So it's better to have something than nothing at all. However, if you can get people to sign up themselves, that would be the preferred route. Great. Well, thank you all for your time. I really appreciate it. And as Rebecca said, we'll try to get this posted as soon as possible for your colleagues or folks that may have missed it. And please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions. Again, the email address is cmp@hbs.edu, C as in cat, M as in Mary, P as in project, @hbs.edu. Thank you so much and have a great day.
Thank you very much, Sarah Jane.
You're welcome. Bye.
Bye.